Good evening and welcome. My name is Jeremy Cammey, Events Architect here at Indigo. Thank you for joining us tonight. First and foremost, I hope you're safe and I hope you're healthy. We know that these are uncertain times. We're now in month 10 and a half, 11 of the lockdown, and it's exhausting, it's frustrating, you're fatigued. And as we pivot and refocus, this is a perfect event tonight to put that negativity aside, to focus on positive energy. And who better than an Olympian and the star of the show as well, François Ménard, and his book, Train Your Brain Like an Olympian, and in French, which was released in 2019, L'Olympien au bureau. So for anyone in Quebec or anyone that speaks French, the book is available. We're ordering it back in again, and it's actually available in our Quebec stores as we speak. So thank you for joining us. And now on to the introductions. And in true Olympian fashion, we need to have some music. So this is authentic. We hope you enjoy it as we do these introductions. Here we go. François Ménard from Montreal is a mental performance expert who coaches high achievers in all walks of life. He is the founder of Cambio Performance, specializing in mental training and leadership coaching. His clients are proven winners, Olympic gold medalists, Cirque du Soleil artists, Super Bowl and X Games champions, surgeons, musicians, and corporate leaders. He is a best-selling author, a radio personality, and accomplished speaker who travels the globe to share his knowledge with top-performing companies. And in one of his most recent posts on Instagram, he said the butterflies in your stomach are actually a good thing. Maybe we'll get into it. Good evening, Jean-François. Ça va bien?
Ça va super bien. Thank you, Jeremy. Great introduction.
And now, someone else equally as talented. Tessa Virtue is the most decorated female figure skater in history. Together with her ice dance partner, Scott Moir, the pair earned 5 Olympic gold medals, 3 gold and 2 silver, and captured 3 world titles. Throughout their 22-year partnership, Tessa and Scott epitomized teamwork, resilience, grace. Tessa is currently pursuing her Master's of Business Administration at Queen's University and has collaborated with countless corporate brands for national campaigns. Committed to empowering women, Tessa continues to inspire the nation as she navigates life beyond the actual sport. And in one of her most recent posts, it was very interesting. Someone posted a comment, and her response back was, "You are the prize." Very, very, very profound. Tessa, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Life is good. Yourself?
Great. I'm so excited for tonight. I feel like we've been counting down for ages. Hey, JF?
Oh, my. Yeah, it's been great. I mean, all the excitement we got with the book, and especially how important it is to be mentally tough in these particular times. So yeah, it's great that we can finally do this. And Tess and I are both very busy people, so to be together and talk about this tonight is special for sure.
Well, it's a pleasure that you're both here. I see down at the screen 391 and counting. There's also 14 questions. So for everybody out there, we encourage you to ask a question. And what I will do is I'll come back after the interview, about 20 minutes in or 25 minutes in, and I will resurface those questions and we'll get to as many as we can. In the interim, Jean-François and Tessa, over to you, and then I'll come back soon. So enjoy
Awesome.
the interview.
All right. Thanks you, Jeremy.
Thanks for the
All
intro.
right. So, yeah, well, one thing's for sure. I'm going to hire Jeremy to introduce me for all my speaking gigs now. I mean,
Yeah.
don't beat that. All right. So first of all, I want to say thank you to Indigo for hosting this event. Very, very grateful that you're doing this. So thank you so much. Also want to thank officially ECW Press, my editor, for this wonderful project. Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been great working with you guys. So for you folks out there, just to put you in perspective, we have about 35, 40 minutes-ish. And, Tessa knows me very well. There's no way we're going to do something without structure. Planning is what I do. So we're going to split this in 3 segments. The first segment, we're going to talk particularly about why mental training is important. Secondly, we're going to talk about the Pyeongchang Olympics. So you, Tessa, the lead up that we lived together for the Olympics and the actual experience of competing at the games in 2018. And then the third segment, we'll talk more about how to use mental training outside of sport. Because in the end, this is what the book is about. And as we all know, dealing with pressure and being focused is not only important in sport, but it's important in everything we do, right? So before we get into it, Tessa, I have a question for you. What's more nerve-wracking, doing a live event for Indigo or performing at the Olympic Games?
I mean, I have to say, I have butterflies right now. And I'm also having a real moment of seeing those two chairs behind you in your office.
Oh, yeah.
About the countless hours spent there strategizing and planning and sharing fears and doubts and conquering a lot of those things. I mean, so much happened right there in that space of yours. So it's nice to get the visual.
All right. Well, if you get a little bit too nervous, well, your former mental coach is here, so I'll give you some tips and reminders on how to deal with those nerves.
And it is about you, so I'm happy to play cheerleader and support staff, so we can flip the script a little.
Okay, so let's start with the first segment, the importance of mental training. So, everyone knows, how talented you were, and you were a hard worker on the ice, hard worker in the gym. But I would argue your secret weapon was how much you valued mental training. And so I think it's a great way to start this interview is just to tell us a little bit more on why. Like, why is that so valuable for you, and why did you put so much emphasis on mental training?
Well, it's interesting as athletes. I mean, we spend so much time training our bodies to be in peak physical condition. And you mentioned the gym, the endless training sessions on the ice, and there's so much focus around that. But at a certain level of competition, skill set is high across the board. And the difference maker can be how you handle pressure. And, it's interesting. Scott and I spent, 2 decades of our career really focusing on our partnership, communication. We did a lot of marriage counseling and sports psychology, but without that emphasis on peak performance and really preparing to be our best in one key moment. Of course, that came through a little bit of experience. Yeah. But it wasn't until those last 2 years with you that we really became students in that respect. And I feel we, it was a steep learning curve, but it was also one that just paid such dividends.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in the first chapter of the book, I talk about, and let me see if I can find it quickly. Here it is. So I often use the table as a metaphor to explain, if you want to be solid on your feet as an athlete and be very like a complete athlete, a complete performer, there are really 4 elements you really need to take care of. Like, so the technical aspect of your sport, which you guys, technically you train the different steps and the twists and the twizzles and, everything that's related to figure skating on, several hours a day. There's a tactical aspect, there's the physical aspect, but then that 4th leg, the mental aspect, I mean, you're right. I mean, if you want to be a complete athlete, like if you think of the athletes that go to the Olympics, they're all physically trained, they're all technically trained, but in the end, the ones who are able to manage the moment, manage the pressure, the brain is the motor of performance, right? So in the end, it's so true. And, I'll never forget the moments, back here. And it was a little bit intimidating at the beginning to work with you and Scott, because you would show up with your notepads and a pen and like peppering me with questions like, how can we use visualization better? And, how can we focus better in this moment? And how can we deal with nerves better? And I would plan an hour and a quarter, an hour and a half with them in my office. And in the end, we were here for 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, we brought snacks.
yeah, you brought snacks. But in the end, you mentioned becoming better students. You guys were truly students of the game. And that's what I really admired from you guys. And even maybe just to finish off this segment, there's a special moment that I loved witnessing, is the way you prepared for competitions. And, every athlete has these very specific warm-up routines to get ready for competition. And you would always take a moment and go like hide somewhere in the arena and do something special. Can you tell us more about that and what you would actually do?
Well, are you thinking about the hug?
No. Well, the hug was another unique thing, but about going over your notes.
Oh, yeah.
it was always like super interesting. The first time I saw you do that, I was like, is she doing homework or what is she, from like schoolwork? But going over your notes to make sure that you were mentally ready as well.
Yeah, it did. What was so striking about the beginning of our work with you was the importance of routine and structure. And nothing was a surprise when we got to competition because we had simulated, planned for, and we were ready for every single moment, whether that was at the hotel, en route, at the venue, or right before our music started. And we wrote out, I remember we had to email, it was a task. We had to email you, this is what I do the entire day of a competition. This is what I do 5 minutes before. So everything was just so regimented. And one of those things that I scheduled in was reflecting on my notes, because it was a great way for me to realize that we were ready. We had prepared. And sometimes I would see a little anecdote or an acronym or something that would just trigger something in me, give me that extra boost of confidence and take me back to when we had talked about it originally and allowed me to take the ice a little more fearlessly.
Well, if I may, we can compare that to like a student at school that has studied for their exam. And in that moment, just before the exam, when you go over all your notes and you realize like, I know everything, there's nothing else to do. And I call that, transforming yourself from being confident to being convinced that things will go well. And that's something, you and Scott were great at doing is, that transformation. Like, the last thing I'm going to add to this segment is something I really, really admired from you is the way you were able to perform on demand. Like, it was so interesting to see you, like, if we would have breakfast in the morning before competition, you were yourself, you're the real Tessa, you're easygoing, like just chit chat about everything and nothing. But then there was a transformation, really. Like, and I got to work at Cirque du Soleil, as you know, for many years, and I got to see some of the best clowns, some of the best performers from around the world. You were definitely one of the top ones from like literally transforming yourself from being Tessa Virtue to the figure skater who is there to, to compete and to win. And if you think back of that actual transformation, what went on in your head? Like, what was it was it difficult to do that? Or was it easy given all of the experience that you've had?
This is fascinating because we've not had a chance to really talk, in your book, you reference your experience at the Olympics, for example. And it's such a unique perspective because you are right there living it with us, but we haven't spoken necessarily about what you saw from the outside. I think reflecting back now, I worry and wonder if people thought I was very cold in the sport because it was one of my coping mechanisms that I went into my shell a little bit. I think I sort of felt like I physically put this barrier around me, and I was all about conserving energy as much as possible. And it was a tough thing sometimes with Scott because he's so gregarious. He'd walk into the rink and want to be hugging people. And remember, we had to manage that eventually. I think he put headphones in, whether he was listening to music or not. That was a little tip. But it was just sort of part of my, okay, I'm getting into character. I'm taking time for myself. And it was a visual thing as if the energy was vapor. I didn't want to give any of it to anyone else.
Yeah.
So I do worry about from the outside if ever I was like seemingly cold or, unknowingly mean. It wasn't that.
But in the end, you were locked in. You were in the zone. And I think there's probably a lot of your competitors that admired that. They were probably jealous that you were able to do that. And some of your competitors weren't able to do it as well as you guys could. But it just reminded me of my days at Cirque du Soleil and witnessing some of these best performers on stage. You guys were unbelievable athletes, but you're unbelievable performers. Like, performing on demand is not an easy thing to do. So, all right, segment two. And the reason we have structure, Tessa, we could talk for hours, so we got to be mindful of the time. Okay, so you guys, you do 2 Olympic Games, Vancouver, Sochi. You decide to retire after Sochi, and then two years later, you decide to come back and make a run for Pyeongchang. You have 2 years to get ready, not 4. For some people, they might think, 2 years is plenty of time to get ready for the Olympics. Really isn't in many ways. Like 2 years is quite short, and it goes by quite fast. The question I have for you is, why did you guys come back? Like well, I mean, I know because I was part of the process, but for the people listening to us, I really like this. I really like this story. And I think it's important that, that you share why you guys decided to come back.
There were two key components to that decision. One, this really powerful force, the sensation of knowing that we had more in us, that we had more to explore, more to learn, more potential to tap into. And two, doing things differently. Having that chance to step away from competitive sport and realizing, I think if we had the chance again, I would really capitalize on this, or I would mentally think about it this way, or, this is the style we would want to do. I think all of that it would have eaten away at us had we not had the opportunity to dive back in. And a big part of that driving force was really just improving. Like, we just wanted to be better, and we wanted to do things on our own terms.
On your own terms. And I remember asking you and Scott that question when you first came into my office. And, what you just said is basically what you told me back then. But one thing that you did mention was that you guys missed competing. You just, that feeling of like having to get ready and perform on demand. You guys were doing a lot of shows and stuff, and I think you really enjoyed doing that, but it's just it wasn't the same. And the fact that you had more to give, you guys had to explore it. And we made it, you remember, like, we made it your why. Because in the end, you knew that, 2 years leading into Pyeongchang it wasn't going to be easy. And, as much as we see you guys perform on TV, you guys look flawless and perfect. And, like, everything is lovey-dovey. Like, what happens behind the curtains is not always easy. Like, training is not easy early in the morning. And sometimes there's aches and pains to deal with. And I really think that for everyone listening to us, to identify why you do what you do. Like, why do you spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing your jobs? Or why are you studying a particular, subject? Or why are you an elite athlete? Because in the end, elite sport, like in a lot of tough, professions, you push your limits all the time. And I think understanding your why gives a vision, it gives a direction. So when you derail, you can always come back.
Totally. It's a powerful anchor. And even I remember writing our why on that whiteboard behind you, and I had a photo of it on my phone. And there were oftentimes, in those hard moments of struggle, that you would say, well, why are you going to go to the rink tomorrow? Why are you going to go to the gym? And I would say, well, I should do this because it will help my skill set, or I should do this. And eventually, if we talked in circles enough, those should change to I want to do this because this is my why and this is my goal. Oh, sorry, I don't think that was proper English, but you know what I'm trying to say, like wrapping that back around to, oh yeah, that's why. That's the most powerful thing that is propelling me forward.
Because in the end, when you truly want something, you'll do whatever it takes to get it. And we talk a lot about that in the second chapter when I talk about particularly about motivation. If you split the word motivation in two, it gives motive in action. And in the end, when those motives are very clear, the reasons, the things, the environments, the challenges that will make you take action, when you pay attention to that, it's like out of sight, out of mind, right? Like if you don't pay attention to that, it's difficult to think that you're going to be engaged and really, connect to what you're doing. But it was, I remember, creating that why with you guys, and how many times did we bring it back? And I think like the word anchor is a great word. It's something you can rely on. And in the end, when you think about your why, it's always that kick in the rear end that you need to get going.
Well, we need that reminder of, like, it's all about delayed gratification, right? And sometimes it's easy to forget about that when you're in that daily grind. But when you have the reminder of the long-term goal and perspective, I think that really helps.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys do your first competition in September of 2016, and you win the first 12 competitions, first place every single time, which was the goal, were the expectations. You achieve your goals every time, even though sometimes you're not entirely satisfied with the way you skate because you guys are so perfectionists. But that's for another discussion. But you have lots of success. then we show up in Japan. It was 2 months before the Olympics in Grand Prix finals, and you guys finished second. And I think it's important that we talk about this moment because, we're always tempted to talk about, our successes and the great things that happen and stuff. And sometimes we don't open ourselves to talk about our vulnerable moments and the moments that we didn't perform like we wanted to. So do you think that second place was good or bad, considering where you guys were in the process of getting ready for the games?
It was good. It was a great thing, but it was good because we had the team around us to help leverage that and reframe it into an opportunity for growth. The same thing happened to us. I think we were having these crazy flashbacks of 2014 because of the 2013 Grand Prix final. We were second and went into Sochi and just felt like we never got that momentum back. And so we were frightened. And it was, the only time we would meet up with Gabrielle and Guillaume before the Pyeongchang games. So there was just this feeling of not measuring up and wondering, oh my goodness, what can we do?
Yeah.
But we made major, major changes to our free dance after that. And we had sort of planned, and we talked about that a lot. We had sort of planned on making that change. But I think had we won, we would have been really reluctant to, because the feedback would have been, well, it's working. It's good enough. Why don't you stick with the game plan? You only have 2 months. Well, we totally changed the last 2 minutes of an Olympic program. A complete overhaul, which was terrifying in and of itself, but we had that extra get up and go and that extra, confidence in taking that risk, because at that point, we were chasing. And it's really the ultimate place to be as an athlete, to be feeling like you're coming from behind and you're chasing. But I do think it rallied everyone around us to sort of refocus and reestablish, okay, no, these changes are important, and this is why, and this is how we'll implement them.
I truly believe that continual success can actually be your enemy sometimes, because what happens is then it just becomes the norm, and sometimes we become complacent, and we take things for granted. And I really like what you said about, we were planning to make some changes going into the games, but what if we would have won that competition? Maybe we wouldn't have felt forced to make those changes. And I'll never ever forget the month between that competition mid-December and then nationals in Vancouver 1 month before the Olympic Games, where you guys performed 2 world record scores in Vancouver. And I truly believe that a part of the gold medal victory in Pyeongchang happened in Vancouver a month before. I remember witnessing that, and it was I was so moved from what you did, because you guys in that month, you're right, made so many changes to your program, but I would argue you made a lot of changes to the way you handled yourself around just making sure that, okay, that happened for a reason. We finished second. You know what? It's just a little bit of a wake-up call. But there's no way we're going to let that really influence what's going to happen at the games. And so I just wanted to share that, because in Vancouver, a month before Pyeongchang, it was almost like a confirmation of, okay, they're ready. They're ready for the games. And it's, maybe talk a little bit about that, because the last month before the game was almost just like polishing and fine tuning, and just we're on a highway and let's just roll into Pyeongchang.
Right. Yeah. Let's get on the plane rested and ready at that point. Do you remember watching our training videos before we competed in Vancouver? We had 2 run-throughs taped, 1 short dance and 1 free dance. And I think they were from the day that we traveled to Vancouver. And we didn't feel great physically because we were just exhausted. We were so depleted. And it was the very first time in our entire career that we watched videos of ourselves and actually kind of liked them. We looked at each other and said, oh my God, oh, okay, that's not so bad. Or I like these changes, or I love what you're doing there. And that gave us such a boost. And it was such a first that I think that was, I just remember that moment as being so pivotal, so that we took the ice in Vancouver with an extra little pep in our step.
Well, totally. And just to, maybe conclude that experience in Japan and leading up to the nationals, I'm often asked to define the definition of mental toughness. And the way I define mental toughness, and we talk about it in chapter 4, I think it is to choose to have the right attitude in moments where you're not supposed to have it. To have the right attitude when things are going well, I mean, that's easy. Anyone can do that. You're not mentally tough when you do that. But what was super interesting is you guys were frustrated after that second place in Japan, and you weren't happy with the performance, but you didn't stay stuck in there for very long. And it didn't take much time that it was like, okay, now we're getting on a mission here, and we're getting to work. It's down, getting down to business. And let's make sure that we take this as a positive in the process, and make sure that we are going in 2018 on fire.
Right. And a lot of that was being comfortable within the uncomfortable, which is one of your biggest things. It's in the book. And also, I'm going to be very found out here in this talk, because everything I go around saying and preaching in interviews and corporate talks and with anyone who will listen, it's really all of your material that I've learned from you. So I'm so happy that it's out there for the world. But yeah, like that was part of the process, was being uncomfortable, was pushing ourselves and not getting complacent. And so every time I woke up with that anxiety of, ooh, this is going to be a tough day at the rink, I just had to relish in it. And in fact, just embrace it and think, oh, this is the joy. This is where the satisfaction comes in.
Okay. You're setting up the next point perfectly. Okay. So there's a ton of stuff that, we worked on getting ready for the games, but there was one acronym that you really, really enjoyed. And, acronyms and visual concepts and stuff, these are important because we can rely to that. We can remember, right? And the acronym you really enjoyed was from the word fear. And, there's a few acronyms on there. If you Google, fear acronym, the most common one is fear is false evidence appearing real, which it's true. Fear is about, it's a story we make up about something that could potentially happen. It's not necessarily true. But what was your acronym of fear that you truly, truly connected with, and in the end kind of became almost a guiding light going towards Pyeongchang?
Yeah, certainly a mantra. Face everything and rise. And I loved it because I felt emboldened. There's this misconception, I think, with sports psychology, you could speak to this more, is that, you need to drive out all the negative thoughts and only fill your head with positivity. And that's a bit rainbows and butterflies. And instead, face everything and rise was acknowledging the fear, acknowledging that as very real, and busting through that door anyways. And it just made me feel brave and courageous and fearless, but really grounded at the same time.
There's one thing you told me, and I don't know if you remember exactly what I'm about to say, but it's verbatim. I remember like it was yesterday. You told me the first conversation we had in the new year of 2018. And it's a funny thing. We wake up on January 1st and it's like, oh, the Olympics are coming. It's the year,
I sometimes envy summer athletes for that reason, because they have,
more time.
in the year.
You told me, based on this acronym, that you didn't want to be a victim of the games, and you wanted to control the games. It's almost like you want to instigate, your performance and whatever is going to happen at the games. And it's such a perspective thing, instead of being a victim of, the games. It's huge. I mean, there's so much going on, and, there's so much expectations and yada, yada, yada. And I think the acronym for you was just a great reminder that no. This is how the games are going to go. This is how I decide. Exactly. This is how it's going to go. And it's a sense of control.
Yes.
Whereas where you see it otherwise, it's kind of like, oh, well, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm not sure how it's going to go.
Well, the same way that, we had lengthy discussions about, do we want to know how Gabrielle and Guillaume skate? Do we want to know their score, how they've done? And ultimately we decided no, because it wouldn't change our moment. And we wanted to be able to, no matter what happened in the arena before we stepped on the ice, we wanted to step on the ice and make our own moment and really dictate the feeling in the whole building. And feel, whether we could or we couldn't, we felt we were in control of that. And I think that's a really powerful thing. You're right, with so much stimulus surrounding us.
Okay, so the pressure of the games, you know, like you and Scott are picked to carry the flag, and we all know, you know, the curse with the flag. You know, it's bad luck. You know, you guys wanted to obviously win, so the pressure that comes with that, you know, end your legacy on a high. Maybe just quickly talk about the whole thing, and how did you end up managing that for it to be controllable?
Well, we both bawled our eyes out when we got asked, when we found out that you know, we had been selected to be flag bearers, and it caught us off guard a little bit when I would say maybe half of our B210 team thought it wasn't a great idea, because it didn't even cross our minds to say no to something like that. That was just the ultimate honor. And in reality, I think what, you know, our team was concerned about was that energy management and the stress and the pressure, and there's waiting, and you know, there's a lot that goes into an opening ceremonies. It's not just that lap around with the flag.
Well, there's all the media that happens in Canada before you leave for Pyeongchang as well. Like you had to go to the parliament, you know, there's all these things you need to, you know, to be part of. And
it's so exciting, but it's also an energy drain when you haven't planned for that. And it was 2 days before the team event. So we really had to strategize about it. I mean, we never waffled on our desire to say yes, but that's when the team came together, and Chris Rodstilsky had the flag pole mailed to Montreal so we could practice with it. We had the boots that we were walking in the opening ceremonies with. We had those to practice. We worked with our nutritionist to plan, okay, these are the exact snacks we're going to have on the night of opening ceremonies in our pockets. You know, everything down to a T was considered and thought of. So we just managed it with preparation. And allowed ourselves, okay, we're ready for this. We're focused on our sport. But for those few moments when we were walking with the team, we really allowed ourselves to feel like Olympians and to take in the magnitude of the games. And I think having that opportunity then allowed us to get back to laser focus on the ice. You know, we could embrace that and feel that celebration. But that's because we had the right people around us, I think.
Well, you know, like the adage goes, if you fail to plan to fail, you know, and I think you guys really enjoyed making, you know, knowing that everything was thought about and taken care of. And but to close off this question, and we'll get to the next one in 2 seconds, I talk a lot about managing pressure in chapter 6, and I'm a big believer that there's 2 types of pressure. There's the pressure that comes from above, that is the negative one. So self-doubt and will I be able to perform, you know, to the abilities that I need to, and yada, yada, yada. That's the negative type. That's the one that comes from above that we carry on our shoulders. And that's the heavy one. We don't want that. That's one way to see pressure, but pressure can also come from behind, you know, and propel us to perform at our best. You know, I can't wait to perform at the Olympic Games. You know, it's going to be so exciting to represent our country. And so it's a perspective thing. Pressure is always about perspective. And in the end, I always tell, you know, I told you guys for sure at some point, like, if you feel the negative pressure, it's your fault. Right. If you feel the positive pressure, it's also your fault. Like you're the one that is imposing that on yourself. And we can't say that pressure is negative, because athletes like you and Scott felt a tremendous amount of pressure before you skated, and you won the gold medal. So we can't say that it's only negative. It's also a way to really bring the best out of you, as long as you see it as your friend, you know, as your ally. Yes,
it definitely needed to become our little buddy that we felt very comfortable and close with. Told all our secrets too, but I think you know, if we were at an Olympic Games without pressure, what's the point? I mean, I honestly believe that was part of what made it so special. The end result, or the formulation of the process, the culmination of the process, was purposeful and worthwhile because there was pressure and stress. Otherwise, it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have meant anything.
And how many times did I tell you, you guys signed up for this?
This is what you asked for.
This is what you asked for. I kept telling you guys, and at some point, I'm sure you were tired of hearing me say that. But in the end,
I found comfort in that, especially in that waiting time between warm up and free dance. Because Scott repeated that too. This is exactly the storyline you've been craving. So don't back down now. Don't press that eject button now. This is when you need to step up.
Totally. So before we go to the third segment, I want to just share a little story, and then I'll ask you a question, and then we'll go to the third segment. So there's a team event early in the games. You guys perform very well for the team. You guys win the gold medal, yada, yada, yada. It's a huge event. It's awesome. Big high. Then there was was it 6 days, 5 or 6 days before your individual performance? And we went to Seoul for a few days to disconnect, rest and recover. And, people that are, don't really understand, how athletes really prepare for moments. They train hard, but I would argue they recover harder. And that's the secret in making sure you're energized and you're fresh. And that was the secret weapon, I think, for you guys, is you guys were so good in Seoul to, and Seoul was about 3 hours ish from Pyeongchang, more or less, without traffic. There's a lot of traffic over there, but we were so comfortable in the hotel, and it was all about we got massage and going to the spa and, eating great meals. Room service. But the reason I want to talk about this is when we all came back to Pyeongchang in your first practice back, where in figure skating, the judges are looking during your practices. So you're on. I mean, competition's not going on, but it kind of is at the same time, because they're already looking at what you're doing. And again, there are moments in your life where I'm going to bring to my grave, and I'll never, ever forget how you and Scott were so good during that training. It was scary to watch you, how fresh you were and how on point you were. And I remember watching the judges and other coaches just, these other coaches were supposed to look at their skaters practicing, and they were all looking at you and Scott. And it was kind of like that moment where it's like, okay, they're ready. Like,
yeah,
there's nothing else to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that athletes are good at recovering, because I think we needed to be, but it's not the instinct or the natural inclination, especially at that moment. We had a few little tweaks to make, and you just want to feel like you're progressing or doing something. And so to realize that recovering was important. It was nice to have you there to say, oh, you feel low, you're exhausted, your body's aching and tired. That's what you should be feeling right now. So that I wasn't lost in overanalyzing the fatigue, but really just thinking, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel, and I'm going to feel better next week. So living in that low and just planning for it was critical. But I remember that practice back too. Well, in Seoul, I mean, a big day for us was planning to find coffee. We would have to go and walk and find a coffee shop. Us just traipsing around. And it was nice to kind of step outside that Olympic bubble. But when we came back, I mean, talk about being on a mission. I remember that practice too. And this is going to sound pretty conceited, but at the end of the time with our music, I whispered to Scott, I said, that's how you win the Olympics. And I'm convinced that was a big reason why we were able to.
You're so right, because oftentimes we think we need to do more in important moments. And in the end, sometimes it's doing less, making sure you come in fresh. The actual performance, we'll talk about this for 2 minutes, and then we'll go into the third segment. For people who watch this on TV, especially your free dance, the last one, both dances were awesome. But the free dance, it's easy to watch that and say it was perfect. It was flawless. And I'll never, ever forget again, you coming off the ice and telling me like, oh my goodness, I was distracted a few times during that performance. But what we need to understand with some athletes like Tessa is they get distracted, but they're not distracted for long. And we had worked so much on you creating this ability to catch yourself projecting in the future, or like, there's 30 seconds left, or thinking about the pain, and just quickly bringing your focus back on what mattered, like, gliding on the ice, or like, feeling Scott, or so maybe if you could talk a minute about that. It wasn't flawless, it wasn't perfect. But you were so good at catching yourself being distracted and bringing it back. And in the end, it didn't really affect the performance.
Well, I think before, in the previous chapter of our careers, having those lapses of focus would have really given us a jolt. And we would have felt like, I wasn't focused that entire time. It mustn't have been great. And in the end of our career, we actually not only planned for those moments of shifting gears, but we embraced them. So I so remember skating over the Olympic rinks and having that, oh my God, I'm skating over the Olympic, it's happening. This is what I've been working for. It's happening right now. And that moment just then allowed me to snap back and say, oh, that was a moment. I'm going to be focused on Scott now. And then we would talk and communicate. But it was a good thing because it allowed me to then be fresh back into the feeling of the performance. And I think just understanding that you can't possibly be, laser focused 4 minutes, on the world's biggest stage. And so giving yourself that grace period, or giving us anyways, that helped.
Yeah. Well, and you guys did a lot of coping imagery, like imagining some of these moments that you might be distracted and imagining yourself reconnected, which, what you're doing is you're creating a neurological map in your mind to come up with a solution whenever that happens. And, anyways, we could talk about that for many, many minutes, but in the end, you guys ended up winning gold medal, and to be on the side of the boards and witnessing that, it was such a unique moment because I was crying and laughing at the same time, and I didn't know which emotion to feel. And then, hugging you guys, and
by the
way, what a great moment.
The cool thing in the book is also, I just want to say that, we were selfish and probably quite ignorant at the games of what you were going through. And, you weren't coming into our session saying, I had to change accommodation, or I'm doing this. And I got a greater understanding of just your discipline and your planning for that to also be performing at a high level. And I think that is so cool. I loved that you shared that in the book because it's just a different perspective. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we needed you to be at your best. And there was a lot that went into that.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I'm just a big believer that when you work with high performers, you have to be a high performer yourself. And this is true in any field. You're dealing with high-end clients, like you're dealing with, students in a school. If you're a teacher, they expect the best of you. And it's important to make sure that you have ways to be the best version of yourself on a daily basis. So anyways, we talk a lot about that in chapter 5 in terms of focusing skills and how to reconnect. And so we're going to finish in the last 5 minutes with mental training outside of sport. So, you're involved in so many things. And I know we could talk about this for probably hours. What you bring from being a former Olympian elite athlete and how it helps you now be a student, and an entrepreneur, and, all the other projects you're involved in. So maybe just share, because this is the whole idea of the book is transferring mental training skills that we work with athletes, but to bring it in the normal day life and regardless of what you're doing. Right. So, so maybe just within a few minutes, share a few examples of how you use mental training skills in your everyday life.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that people talk about, that skill set being transferable. And I'm really living it right now and recognizing that so much of it is embedded into the workplace around us. And so many of those skills and techniques are required to flourish. And the strange thing is that often we know the things that we could do to help us succeed. We know if we exercise, if we eat better, if we, put our phones away at night, we know all of those things, and yet it's hard to act on them. And so I think, as an athlete, I created this environment that was so much a suspended reality. Like, that wasn't the real world. I could be so singularly focused, and I was in this real bubble. And now with so many demands, I'm finding anyways, I really have to separate the things that I can control and the things that I can't. And find structure, find purpose, challenge myself in ways, but also understand that like I can't wait for the right time for when I'm going to feel like doing the hard things. Like there's no good time to do the things you don't really want to do. And in sport, that wasn't really an option to procrastinate those things. But in life, I mean, we find these very creative ways of avoiding certain tasks that even if we know they'll help us. And, you know, as I was reading your book, and I've been reflecting on our journals a lot because I'm trying to apply all this sense of resilience into what I do now. And so much of it is taking care of the details, putting in the hard work to plan and prepare, and sticking with it.
Totally.
It's not complicated, but we have to help ourselves and set ourselves up for success.
Well, and I mean, so many examples, like, you know, you're having a why as an athlete, you know, having a why as a student, having a why with whatever, you know, projects you're working in, boosting self-confidence, like celebrating little wins. How many times have we talked about that? You know, and it's so important to do on a normal day basis. Like we're so good at catching ourselves being bad.
Yeah.
Criticizing ourselves, like, you know, being negative with ourselves, but catch yourself being good. Like, you know, the brain fuels on accomplishments when we're aware of them. So regardless if they're big or small. So that's super important. Like mindful breathing.
Yes.
You know, how much did you, Scott, train your breath to make sure to be able to be calm on demand, to have the front part of your brain operating, the smart part of your brain, instead of your limbic system where you're panicky. Well, it's the same thing if you're getting ready for an interview or, you know, you're doing, you know, a keynote speech to 1,000 people and you want to do super well. Like it's the same thing, right? And I could go on and on and on and on. And that's the goal of the book, basically, is to make people understand that these things are, it's simple to apply when you know how to do it. And, you know, sometimes a lot of these types of books, that's the feedback I've been getting anyways, is they remain a little bit theoretical. And my goal with this book was to make it really practical and to, you know, to use some storytelling and images to support what I'm explaining, and specifically, you know, making it relatable if you were not an Olympic athlete or a professional athlete in the past. So.
Well, and you've done just that. I mean, you can pick up this book and go to any page and there's a takeaway, there's a nugget of information, there's something you can apply to your daily life. And whether that's on the Olympic stage or not, it's all relative. And I think it's just about being your very best self. So equipping yourself with those tools is important and integral to that. So I'm so proud of you, and I'm so excited that you're sharing your knowledge and your experiences with so many people. I just love it. It's so great to like hold in my hands after talking about it with you for such a long time.
It actually feels good. ECW, it feels soft.
Yeah.
Tessa, thank you for the kind words. But in the end, you know, athletes often give me credit for the work that I've done with them. And athletes will never understand how much you guys give to me as well, because in the end, and it's the same, you know, the nutritionist will say the same, strength conditioning coach will say the same, skating coaches will say the same. Like it really is a partnership. And in the end, most of the stuff that you used, it didn't really come from me. It was more, we created it together. Because I'm not a recipe type of guy. Like whatever I told you to work on, it was different for someone else. Because, you know, we, based on your needs, we came up with something that was relatable to you, right? So thank you for the contribution in all those stories in the book, and you know, your participation. And so Jeremy, I don't know if you're still there. I just realized that we've been talking for 48 minutes. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep. But let's take maybe a 5-10 minutes for questions. I'm not very good with technology, so I'm not too sure how to manage the chat box, but you're there. There you go. I'm not surprised. I knew you were going to be there.
So, would I ever let the both of you down? We've got an Olympian and a mental health coach. Of course, I've got to be here. I've been taking notes. This is great. We can't get there. Okay, so there's 27 questions. We can't possibly get to all of them. Because this was so engaging, we went over, which is great. So I'm going to ask the most voted, maybe the top 3. So here's the first. When you had injuries, as I'm struggling with chronic vertigo now, how did you stay positive and motivated through to overcoming those injuries?
Oh, I mean, I'm so sorry that you're experiencing that. That must just be so painful. You know, I honestly don't think I stayed positive. I think it's really hard through chronic pain to remain positive. And if that's the benchmark, then you'll be disappointing yourself day after day because it's hard and it's a heavy weight. One of the key factors in the end was actually finding ways in which I could like have a sounding board. So people that I could share that with. And, you know, we want to be so strong and tough. And as an athlete anyways, I was taught to just sort of suck it up and grin and bear it and work through the pain. But the moment that I started admitting how I felt or how bad it was to Scott or to my coaches or to JF, I felt like, okay, it existed out there in the universe and we could deal with it practically. We could come up with a plan. When it was in my own head and I felt, you know, unworthy or weak or, you know, not strong enough to battle through it, it was compounding the issue physically. JF, I'd be so curious to hear your thoughts on that because, you know, a lot of people would be experiencing something like that.
Yeah, dealing with injuries is not an easy thing. And it's so easy to put your focus on what you're not able to do because you're injured. And it's so important to pay attention to the progress you're making in the recovery and to make sure you're doing something to get better. So what I mean by that is like when I work with an injured athlete, you know, they're out, let's say for 2 months, I make them reflect on, you know, where they were a week ago or 2 weeks ago and make them understand like, hey, listen, you can move your shoulder a lot more than you did a week ago. And it's, oh yeah, really? Yeah, it's true. I didn't think about that because athletes often think about the future. Actually, not only athletes, we all do. Okay. We often think about, you know, how long is this going to take? These are the things they're not able to do. But if you think of the progress and you become a little bit more motivated to keep working on your injury because you realize like, you know, it's getting better. So that would be my piece of advice is to make sure that you have the proper guidance, support, treatment to start with, and to pay attention to the progression. And at some point you realize like, oh wow, I am getting better. And at some point you get out of it. So
yeah, and I hope you do. Then you'll be really grateful and celebrating every moment you're not feeling that crippling pain.
I think, and that was from Paulina. So Paulina, we're wishing you well. Next question, I think for both of you from Steffi, 10 votes on this question. What is your strategy? This is for both of you. What is your strategy in dealing with imposter syndrome at work?
But,
that's an intense one.
It's a funny one because like I felt it even in our very last tour in 2019. I would take the ice and feel like, oh, at some point everyone's going to figure out that I'm a fraud and I'm actually not good at this. But I have medals and objective success to show that like at one point I was the best and yet I still felt that. So I remember telling my sister that and she would think, oh my goodness, I can't believe you feel that same way because we had measurable success. So it's a very real and normal thing to feel. JF, what's your take on it?
I felt it twice. Well, more than twice, but two particular moments where it was really strong. I remember when I was getting ready for my first Olympic Games in Rio in 2016, a few months before the games, I felt a lot of pressure and I was thinking like, am I really ready for this? Because some of the athletes I'm working with are supposed to medal. And I needed to discuss with a lot of people around me that had been to the games before and make me realize like, no, like you signed up for this. This is what you wished for, right? It took about a month and a half before I really realized like, no, okay, this is great. And writing this book, I got to say like writing a book is, I mean, it was so much fun to put my thoughts on paper. But there are several moments in the process where you question yourself, like, I'm exposing myself here. Like, what if people don't like what I wrote? That really exists. It really, and as a figure skater, it's kind of the same thing. You work on your program so much, and the first time you show it, I'll, we talked about this many times. Like, are judges going to like it? Is it going to fit? Like, are people going to welcome my program the way I think? I love it. It's the same thing for the book. Like, I thought my concepts and principles were very important and people would like to read them, but you don't really know until people give you feedback. So I went through it when I was writing the book. I
don't know, Steffi, I feel like probably 90% of the time I was on the ice, I was faking it. I was faking that confidence. So I'm not against that idea of like sort of fake it till you make it. A lot of the mentors I've talked to, even in the business realm, will say that they're put in these positions that they don't necessarily feel qualified for, and you just make your way. And shoulders back, head up, there, up you go. You deserve to be there. Just own your power and know what you're bringing to the table.
All right. Question 3 with 10 votes. I love this. We have a very engaged audience who is voting on all these questions.
I love it.
Yeah. This is from Natalie. Here we go. And I'm so happy that everyone is staying. We got all these people here. No one has left. I'm loving this. Bridgerton can wait. The Undoing can wait. Anything on Netflix can wait. This is much more important. What advice or strategies would you recommend if someone is changing their profession, starting a new course at school, or even just hesitant to do something new, especially if they suffer from mental health issues, including severe anxiety?
Can I go first, Tess, on this one?
Oh, take it away.
What I'm about to say might be a little bit cliche, but it is so important. It's so true that it works, is to make sure that you truly, truly like and enjoy what you're going to throw yourself into. Because if you're going to spend several hours a week doing something, I mean, and you don't like it, it's going to be long. And I challenge people all the time. Like, my reality now is, so I work a lot. I still a lot with, Olympic and pro athletes and stuff, but I work a lot with executives and, medical practitioners, pop stars, politicians. And oftentimes they're in my office and we talk about that, like how it's stressful what they do. And, sometimes they question themselves, and I'll literally ask them, like, is this the right thing for you? Like, do you really want to keep doing this? And these are difficult questions to ask ourselves, but in the end, it's really, really important to choose something that you're curious about, you want to discover. And once you realize like it might not be the thing, do something else. It's okay. And we're so scared from, how society's going to, what people are going to say about us, or, hey, if you're chasing something, go for it. And if it doesn't work out, just try something else.
We'll do one more and then a quick round of Would You Rather. Here we go. Yeah, I know, Tessa, you and I know this game very well because we did it before. Tips on trusting the process. Here's the question. 7 votes, but I don't know who it is because unnamed. Tips on trusting the process and believing in your hard work. I am a grad school student. I'm hopeful, and I find it difficult to stay confident in this journey, especially with self-doubt. It sounds like a lot of, and maybe Jean-François, I'm wrong, and maybe I'm not, but my understanding is, based on this question, that we have way more negative thoughts on a daily basis than positive thoughts.
We do. Did you know that in the dictionary, there's about 4 negative words for 1 positive word? When we talk about emotions, there's about 4, it's equal 4 to 1, more or less. So we have a lot more options being negative than positive. But anyways, that's a side note. Well, Tess, I'm going to ask you a question, and we're going to discuss about this. So you're starting an Olympic cycle, which is similar to, an undergrad program, or it's 4 years. So do you think about the Olympics every day, or how do you chunk that down to make sure you're focused on the right stuff?
Well, that's actually the challenge, to not think about the Olympics every single day. I think trusting the process is an interesting one because, we even got into some debates with our coaches when we would overanalyze the state of things and want to do more, or and a lot of that, and then that's why I like to write notes, is because it's nice when you can go back and see something tangibly that you've accomplished or that you've done, and you can reflect on that. And sometimes we need those reminders in order to remember where it is we're heading and what direction we're heading in. And I guess the question becomes, how long do you trust the process, and when do you know when to recalibrate and switch gears or change direction? You know, and part of that is like an intuition thing, I think, or believing in your pursuit. But trusting that, like for me, I have this visual of knowing that it's always an up and down. And so actually when I'm living the highs, I'm a little bit worried because I know what's coming next is a low. But when I'm in the low, then I just sort of think, okay, I need to sort of get through this, knowing that what comes next is an upswing. And that's just the natural, like being able to zoom out and get some perspective and scope on that, I think really helps. I'm not sure we've really answered that question though.
Well, Tess, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. What you said was spot on. And I'm a big believer that the best way to manage uncertainties is by managing the certainties. We don't know what's going to happen in 2 months, in 6 months, in a year. For the student, you have no clue how your class is going to go in 6 months or in 12 months. And you can think about it for hours, but whatever you're going to think about, it won't happen that way. It's just, we don't have a crystal ball. And I like the metaphor of, if you're driving a car at night in the country, you're driving from Montreal, let's say, to Toronto. Okay. It's a 5-hour drive in the country. You're not taking the highway. You're going by the side roads, and you know, you're going to Toronto. That's your end goal. But you're not thinking about Toronto the entire time. What you're paying attention to is what the lights are projecting in front of you. You just, the first 75 feet in front of you, that's all you're paying attention to. And the more you do that, you're going to get to Toronto safe and sound. So I'm thinking like transferring this metaphor into a university program, like just focus on the next week. Just be very good in the next week, and whatever you have to deal with, that's certain. Those are certainties. And by doing that week in and week out, at some point you realize like, wow, time flew, and already I'm at the end of the semester and things are going great, And that's the way we did it with you and Scott, Tess. Like, that 2 years was really intense. And to think about, we need to be ready for Pyeongchang all the time it was overwhelming. But to chunk it down per performance, week in and week out, by keeping a short-term, thinking in terms of short-term future, you diminish the anxiety because it's within your control. It's right there.
Okay. And finally, the last segment, Jean-François, as you say, the last segment will be Would You Rather? These are questions that none of you have seen before. They are very fast answers, only 3 of them, but we'll see how in sync you are. You have to answer at the same time. Are you ready?
Yes.
Good start.
Okay. Here we go. Only be able to use a fork or only be able to use a spoon? Answer now.
Fork.
Okay, that's pretty good. Be compelled to high five everyone you meet for the first time, or be compelled to dance with everyone you meet for the first time? Answer now.
High five.
Oh.
I feel I do the high five thing already.
Yeah, but wait a second. Tessa's a great dancer. I'm not. So that makes total sense.
True. Okay. Well, Tessa, yeah, that's true. Tessa and we're both great dancers. Finally, and we have the video to prove
Yeah.
that's true. Be completely invisible for 1 day, or be able to fly for 1 day. Answer now.
Fly, without a doubt.
Okay, fly without a doubt. Good. On that note, a final question, and I think this is important during these times, and I ask both of you. As now we're in month 11, and I think that sense of humor and being able to smile is very important. I'd like to know from both of you, what brings you joy?
Go ahead.
First?
But
Listen, there are many things. What brings me joy is professionally is to witness my clients live their dream. Really, like I keep reminding myself, Jeremy, my why is that I'm privileged and I'm honored to help people achieve their dreams. And I tell myself this every single morning, because in the end, I don't deserve to work with people like Tessa Virtue if I don't remind myself of that, because I am truly privileged to work with people that are chasing their dreams. So professionally, I would say that brings a lot of joy to me.
Jeremy, that's so in line with your thinking always. You're so grateful. Like, I think you share that and you spread joy, whether you're dancing or engaging in conversations. I love that tie-in. Yeah, I think making other people feel good brings me the most joy. How about you? How would you answer that?
Pardon?
How would you answer that?
What brings me joy? It's a deep question, and I'm sitting beside an Olympian and a mental coach for Olympians. What brings me joy, honestly, is to see other people happy. I think that we need more positivity in this world right now. We need more energy in this world right now, and I think we need more giving, and we need to sprinkle this world with confetti, full of kindness. And that's where I see. That's where I see people being happy. Saying hello to your neighbors outside, thanking the individuals who pick up your garbage on a weekly basis, thanking those frontline workers, be it in the healthcare system or even when you go to the grocery store to pick up milk or anything else. So for me, I've often said this, that the way you treat others says a lot about who you are as a person.
Absolutely. Well said.
And I would add what brings joy to me right now is the fact that we had this event. I mean, and all the 432 people stay the entire time. Like, thank you to everyone for doing that. And I just wonder though, like in the province of the Quebec right now, we have a curfew at 8 o'clock. So I wonder if people stayed on because they have nothing else to do and they had to be at home. And or did they really want to listen to us? I'm not sure. But anyways, or maybe both.
Totally true. It was a pleasure to speak with both of you and obviously to watch this interview. Love to have you both on again, perhaps in a few months when this is all over, so we can reconnect and figure out where everybody else is now that we're on the other side. So final notes from either of you. I just want to say for everyone out there watching that you need to stay healthy and stay safe. Last comments, Jean-François, and then Tessa.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Indigo again. I started the session like that, and I want to end like that. This is great. Thank you for doing this and for everything that you do that you're doing for this book. So thank you so much, and thank you, Tessa, as well, for accepting the invitation.
Of course, I wouldn't have missed it. Thanks, and congrats to you. I'm just so excited. Thanks to Indigo, but thanks everyone for joining. Stay safe and take good care of both yourself and others.
And don't forget, the book is available right down below. You'll see that link. And also in Quebec, the book's available in store. And for everyone out there, we'll meet again. Have a great afternoon. Have a great evening, wherever you're watching from. West Coast, East Coast, Central. Take care, everybody.